Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Globalization. Today we have Vedant Jain with us. Thank you for coming.
Nice having me.
Today I want to talk to you more and pick your brain about kind of the globalization of sports and cultures and how that's taking over the SoCal, and how you see from your extensive experience playing cricket here how it's kind of seeped over from overseas to the local our communities here and our culture, and kind of seeing how this recent trend in the shifts of sport, like all sports going across seas and national borders, and each country now having more like better Olympic teams, and the world is less specialized as it was in the sports field a couple of decades ago. So anyway, do you want to start us off by taking us through a little bit about your experience cricket when you were living in India, and how it's kind of shifted over now?
Yeah, of course. I first picked up a cricket bat maybe when I was like 2 or 3 years old, just playing, with the tennis ball in my backyard in India, playing with friends in the building. Just the way a lot of people do in India, considering what a big sport it is over there. And I think seeing my passion in the sport, my parents and my grandfather, who himself used to play some good level cricket in Mumbai. Sort of put me into an academy. There I was just playing 2 3 4 hours a day. I was just in love with the game, watching every game that I could watch on TV with my grandfather. Just talking cricket all the time, just absolutely obsessed with the game. And as I grew older, I started playing a little bit more seriously, playing I think in Mumbai, like it's the Harris Shield, Gal Shield, that sort of stuff is pretty popular. It's like see the school tournaments, playing a lot of like good school tournaments, playing with some very accomplished cricketers, focusing more on like my skills development, that sort of thing. I was always a leg spinner from a young age. I think a lot of people of my age sort of were inspired by the late great Shane Warne. And then as I grew older, I got stronger, started improving a little bit more, and I even did a bit of wicket keeping, just because I used to play soccer and I used to be a goalkeeper in that. Um, and eventually, I think I sort of I never really considered cricket as something I could do professionally. It was just something I did because I loved it. I loved the training. I loved the games. I loved the camaraderie. And sort of last 2 years of high school, junior, senior year, I sort of quit cricket to pursue make sure that I get good grades, get into a good college. And it was actually for college that I came to the US. So I suppose in a way it was possibly a good thing that I had more time to study, to be able to make it out here, and I get good grades, good enough grades to get to the US.
So I think that's very interesting that you talked about not wanting to pursue professionally there. Has that changed for you now?
Yeah, it was really interesting because it was only after coming to the US that I started reading more about the sport. I sort of renewed my passion for the game through the USC Cricket Club. So I did my undergrad at USC, and USC happens to be the college with the most established, most expanded college cricket setup, with a bunch of teams in the local club competitions and intramural league. And I sort of got back into the sport through the USC club team, and it was through that club team that I sort of started reading more about the sport, learning more about the sports in the States, and looking at the massive potential that the sport had in the States, and the massive steps that the country was taking in cricket. And I was like, this could be my chance to sort of pursue a career where I didn't think that there was one. And sort of with no facilities, no proper like coaches or anything in the LA area, I sort of, or as I thought at the time, I sort of just went to the like USC's track and field ground. And I was just like, I'd just take a bucket of balls and just bowl to a net, just like for hours on end every day. And I think now I'm actually starting to see a possibility of a professional career in the sport in the US through potentially like major league and that sort of thing.
That's great, man. Just kind of talk us through if you're talking about the the future that you see right now with major league and whatever this and that. Now I know me personally, because I play the sport, I have more like knowledge into it. But like here and here, and many people around, they don't see the growth or anything like that with cricket here in Southern California. Take us through what you've seen from your time here. Well, first of all, take us through the shift of cultures that you see when you got here, from where in India you grew up with cricket all around you, to now here where there was little. And then has that changed over your years that you spent here in the US?
Yeah, I think I think it's not a new thing to try to sort of harness the US cricket loving market. And I think, even before I came to the States, I came to the States in 2016. So before that, I think there's been multiple attempts of trying to, do a T20 league or these pop up tournaments, or like they had the Sachin Tendulkar, Shane Warne sort of thing that happened here. So it's not a new thing. In that, if you look at it in isolation, it's like Major League Cricket putting a T20 tournament in the US. It's not like a new thing that they're trying to do. But I think the main shift that I've seen in the US is essentially that I can see a change in the in from a grassroots level all the way to the top in the amount of participation, the amount of facilities. So, for example, I was recently in Atlanta. They have a brand new 7-field facility there. They have a bunch more participation, a whole lot more investment and into cricket over there.
Yeah.
I think you know unfortunately, I don't think that the greater Los Angeles area, we've seen that sort of shift just yet. I don't think we've seen, since I've come here and since I don't think that there's been too much change apart from obviously the minor league franchises that have come to the minor league tournament that started. Apart from that, I don't see a ton of difference in the immediate area. But, if you look at it larger, and like, in the context of the entire nation, I think where it's changed is that there's been grassroots initiatives to build academies like the one in Seattle, the one in the Bay Area. You see professionals coming in from overseas to sort of strengthen the domestic cricket here. You see a tournament like Minor League, which has had 2 successful seasons. You're seeing more kids join these academies, more involvement, more participation, more facilities, more grounds, stadia being built. So that's sort of shift I'm seeing overall in the nation. And hopefully it's just a matter of time before we see that in our local Los Angeles area as well.
So why do you think that, with Atlanta or with the other cities where they're really growing their facilities, infrastructure, and just like the culture there, why do you think we haven't been able to do that in Los Angeles? Is it more of like a local or like culture-based thing? Is it more of like a demographic-based thing? Or is there some other help that they have there that we don't have here?
That's a good question, actually. I think that there's a few factors involved, actually. So, firstly, I'd say that the Indian population in Los Angeles just is physically spread out. So you have like a pocket in Irvine, you have a pocket in like Artesia, Cerritos areas, you've got a pocket in like Culver City and a pocket in the Valley. And these are like very physically spread out. And you know how, and I think what that causes is that, and that's sort of different to like even the Bay Area, where predominantly the Indian population, which drives cricket in the US, is sort of all in the South Bay, or in Atlanta, where they're all in North Atlanta, the Alpharetta area. And I think that that might seem a little like that might seem trivial, but I think what happens is that when you do have that sort of nexus in these in these areas, what happens is that then you can sort of you have a bigger petition to the city government. You've got a more like a stronger stranglehold on being able to develop grounds, to be able to develop academies, to develop these sorts of things. So that's definitely one point. Another point is that I don't think that the management of the local league, the SCCA, which has control over the facility of Woodley Park, I don't think that they've really taken the game forward in the way that they have in other cities. For example, they haven't really pushed a very strong youth program. They haven't, brought in a whole lot of pros from overseas the way that a lot of the other, like they haven't really worked with Major League Cricket. And I think from that perspective, I don't think that they see a reason to, but I don't think I think that's also helped them back a little bit, is that they haven't been able to really work with Major League Cricket that closely. Another factor that I thought was also that LA does have pretty crazy property prices. So to build facilities and to build infrastructure is obviously a lot harder in LA than it is in a lot of different in other parts of the country. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So going off of that property value thing, I know you built nets, cricket nets in the backyard of your frat house, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Talk us through that. 'Cause, I mean, to me, that's like very like inspiring and so like surprising at the same time. How like at a USC frat house where I assume that most people there like weren't like really like cricket fans or even like into the sport or even knew much about it. How are you able to build that? It's a small but very important facility component. How'd you get that done?
Yeah, that's actually a pretty funny story. I think honestly, it was more luck than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Partially, what kind of happened is that the fraternity that I was a part of when I was at USC, the fraternity sort of went away during COVID. So what happened is through a lack of enrollment in USC and a lack of being able to do rush and recruitment and those sorts of things, the fraternity actually went away. And actually, I sort of fell into the position with a couple of my other former fraternity brothers to actually sort of manage the property to make sure, to stop it from being foreclosed on, to make sure we're paying the mortgage, that sort of thing. And I sort of that sort of became like a part-time job for me. And in doing that, I had we had this huge backlot area that was just overrun with weeds and I measured it out, and it was coincidentally 66 feet, which is just about perfect for a cricket pitch.
Yeah.
And had this like super long run up and everything. But it worked basically, and it took a bit of investment on my part. I saved up a little bit of money, and I decided, with my business partner's permission, sort of converted the area over. Now, we have a single lane indoor facility where people can come and practice, and it's given me like a part-time job in coaching as well.
Yeah, that's really impressive. Kind of going back to the topic of like getting people more involved, what do you think is like the best way for locals who are not like as familiar with the sport of cricket? Like, what is the best way to kind of like get them into like familiarizing themselves with the sport, kind of helping push like the development and like further like the interest of cricket and like our like local SoCal community area?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think something that is always good is to get it into school programs. Find ways to introduce the sport into physical education programs. That's always big. Having academy. I think a lot of people, when they say get Americans into cricket, get local Americans into cricket, they're imagining like your suburban like American like white American children like picking up a bat and ball for the first time. But I think the first challenge is to get your first generation American Indians and American Pakistanis and American like Afro Caribbeans into the game in the first place. So I think getting your first gen immigrants into cricket is the first step, and that can be done through again, for example, in the Bay Area, introducing cricket into schools, which have a large American Indian population. Being able to have the ability to be like, okay, this is an established cricket program in which you can enter your child. For example, if there was a really professionally run academy, and which parent doesn't want their child to have a slice of home in their sort of development, and through that you also have physical education taken care of. So I think having that integrating into education and building academies and really harnessing those first gen first generation. I think that's the first step.
So in harnessing this first generation, also like what you said about your coaching, kind of, can you like tie it together and tell us how maybe like through your coaching, have you, or like, actually a better question for you. In your coaching, one, how's that been going? And two, the kids that you coach, are they more like people who've been playing cricket, or is it more people that are like just like starting for the first time?
Yeah. So firstly, it's going great. For me, I mean, I love working with people. I mean, I'm just an absolute cricket nut. I just love my cricket. I love just being around the sport. You know, so for me, coaching is just it's more than just a job. It's like really something I enjoy doing. So I really enjoy just working with people, talking cricket to people, and that sort of thing. It's going pretty well. I'm working with about, you know, I think about 10 to 15 clients at this point. Apart from, you know, I work with the USC Cricket Club as well, which is forms quite a large part of my work right now. But apart from that, about maybe about 10 other clients apart from that.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, I think I work with a pretty big range. So what I have found is that a lot of the people that are sort of zero generation, people who've immigrated recently from India, they have like India or Pakistan or wherever really, they have they have a skill set already from having, you know, even if it's just, you know, a little bit of academy training or whatever it is. But a lot of the times, the people who are first gen immigrants who are sort of trying to reconnect with their culture, and especially a lot of them are either very young or a lot of them are just like, you know, adults who just want to get into a sport that they associate with culturally but haven't actually tried.
Right.
Or a lot of them, it's like a lot of basics, which is really interesting for me because you know, it's been so long since I've learned those sorts of things. It's a really interesting impression, a challenge as well for me.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you get your name and your coaching thing out? Like, you know, like how do like your clients, like, how do they know like there's a Vedant Jain out there who's like willing to like coach them and teach them the basics of cricket? Like, how do you get your? So I feel like if it's sport like basketball or something like that, like through like the word of mouth or like through like common like interactions, people hear about this club, that club, but where publicity for cricket is so low here. How do you get your like your coaching like program name out, and how do you like find these clients?
Yeah, that's actually a very important. I keep honestly, I'm not a very big social media person. I wish I had a better social media presence. I wish I could you know, post more. I just feel very I maybe a bit awkward to post about myself on social media, but I think that definitely social media helps. But you know, to be honest, I wish I did more publicity and more marketing. But honestly, for me, it's a lot of word of mouth. I think if
Mm-hmm.
someone's happy with me, and the cricket community is so small and insular that if someone's happy with me, they text their friends, and their friends text their friends, and you know, and it makes it sort of, you know, gone from there. But you know, it's definitely worth something to think. It's definitely something to think about, actually, about looking at ways to, you know, market a bit more.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And kind of like moving on, like, what do you see for the future of cricket? Maybe like 5-10 years from now, do you think it's going to be like an even bigger sport? Like, what do you like see for it in the future?
Again, a really good question. I think it's really interesting because I think what USA Cricket has done a little bit. I think I don't know if you guys are familiar with the sort of the shenanigans that have been going on these last couple of weeks. But I think from my understanding, what USA Cricket's done a little bit is they've put their eggs in the Major League Cricket basket, where they've given Major League Cricket rights to like broadcast rights, and then sort of strategic partner rights for quite a few years. So I believe, I think that from my understanding, I think the long-term success of USA Cricket and cricket in the USA rather hinges on the success of Major League Cricket.
Right.
Yeah.
And that being said, I do believe that, given that, all the intelligent people associated with Major League Cricket and the grassroots investment that they are doing, I do believe that it will be successful. And again, in 10 years' time, if cricket in the USA has successfly harnessed the first generation immigrants, the second generation immigrants, I think that's a very, very good start. Because, a lot of the generation immigrants are going to be into the sport anyway. But I think the one thing that's really encouraging is that it looks like they are trying to harness a US audience for the league, and rather than a international audience for it. So I think that's pretty encouraging for me, because it looks like they're trying to develop that local market, which obviously means developing academies, participation, viewership at a local level,
So also, one more big goal of our podcast is taking like these like national or international events and then connecting them back to SoCal. There's two events that I want to like talk to you about, and then see what you think, how they've impacted cricket in Southern California. One, like you mentioned, the recent news that the USA Cricket Board is in debt and they can't afford to fund some of these like men's national tournaments, this and that. As far as looking at it from a Southern California perspective, how much of a blow was that, and what does that mean for Southern Californian youth cricketers, or even like young men cricketers like you, who want to elevate their game and make a name or income for themselves based on the sport?
Yeah, I think that with the it's hard to say anything to without like being on the inside and knowing more details. It's hard to say specifically, but what I can say is I think that it was really good to be able to participate in the men's national championship last year, because it was such a good exposure really, because I think that because the US is so big, it's sometimes it can be hard for, say, someone who's trying to get into the national team to really get seen at have all the 100 best players put in all in one place. So it does sting a little bit for someone who's trying to push for those teams and do all the right things, to lose one major opportunity to sort of be seen.
Okay, so yeah.
But that being said, I'm sure that there'll be more opportunities, in the next, I'm sure there's more opportunities coming up. Hopefully the situation with the finances, gets resolved, and they do go back to sort of having these events, because it was done so well last year.
Yeah.
And I also hope this doesn't, end up being something like it was with like USACA, where it kind of like had kind of stuck up cricket here for a couple of years. And also the other thing was it wasn't too recent, but a little while ago, a year or so, maybe more, they announced that they'd be giving out the USACA, obviously, with like or sorry, not USACA, like the USA board, in connection with like State Department, whatever, they managed to get together a program where if people from other countries want to come live here, play cricket, they can get citizenship in 2 years. And as you know, that's attracted people like Mukchand and other top names who didn't really quite make it in their own like major cricket country, and have moved here. So like you said, with limited opportunities and with it being hard for like people to like get known and get that like level of recruiting and like whatever to like make these like crack into these squads, having people like Corey Anderson, Unmuk Chand, Raheem Cornwall, these big names where everyone knows, do you think that draws away from maybe the chances given to local talent? Because at the top of minor league, maybe they could ever still have these foreign players who are kind of clogging up opportunity. So how do you think that serves to maybe increase competition, or do you think it serves the opposite way and clouds up chances for people like you trying to make it to that like high stage?
Yeah, it's that's a pretty big conundrum, but I think honestly for me, I think it's like, if you get to play with and against these sorts of players, that's what's going to get you to the level you like. Even through minor league, where every team had 4 to 6 of these sorts of like professionals.
Yeah,
I think what happens is you have to get to that level
Right.
in order to make sure that you're able to compete. So I think the key there becomes that you have to be able to it's good to have these sorts of people in your backyard to basically train with them, compete with them in order to sort of get your game to the level, because like without that sort of level of competition, let's say you have somebody who's young and they make the US national team without having put themselves through that sort of that sort of conditioning, and then once they reach that level and they're playing against professionals and semi-professionals in associate cricket, they might find themselves out of their depth. Whereas I feel now there's a way to really test themselves.
Yeah, locally. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we don't want to hold you for too long, but one last question. This is what we ask everyone at the end of our podcast. In some cases it applies. This case maybe not so much, but still, if there was one other like government action, whether it be like funding, any laws, any bills, any subsidies, or like I said before, maybe incorporating it into like the curriculum or in physical education in schools, what change do you think would be beneficial to growing cricket as a sport in Southern California? Whether it be getting better opportunities or just better like publicity and knowledge about it. Like what one change would you want to see, whether from the local, state, or federal government, that would help cricket here?
I think honestly, something that would really, really help would just be if Parks and Rec was easier to work with about getting like local grounds built. Like a lot of cities, especially like just looking at our neighbors in Northern California. Like you go into a city like Union City or Fremont, and every second park has an AstroTurf pitch in the center of it, and it's those sorts of fields and those sorts of parks in the cities that are then those lead to, and like with nets in the corner of them or something that you can then build participation off of. And through local participation, that's how you get that's how money gets into the sport, that's how interest gets built in a sport, so being able to like in all of Southern California, you have one facility which has AstroTurf pitches, and there are some turf pitch facilities, but like there's like Buena Park and Woodley, of course. But outside of those two facilities, I think like the quality of the cost and quality of AstroTurf is just so of real grass is just so expensive that it becomes inaccessible almost. So being able to, if Parks and Rec was a lot easier to work with, and if more facilities like El Monte were built all like dotting all across the giant landmass that is the greater LA area. I think that's something that would really, really help cricket in the area.
That's spot on.
Yep.
Once again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yep. Thank you for being on here. Yep.
Thank you, Vedant, and good luck to you in your upcoming cricket endeavors.
Of course. See you guys soon.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.